Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week. Mom and I are excited. We are welcoming back Dr. Elsbeth Muth and Freddy Weaver to come on with us. They have been on quite a few episodes with us. They came on as a special for National Intimacy Day. They've been on episode 112, 154, 169, 190, 209. So we're excited to welcome them back. For anybody that doesn't know them, they have assisted thousands of couples and singles create lasting intimacy and fulfillment in their life and relationships. They're featured on Showtime's documentary series Sexual Healing and the Emmy Award-winning NBC show Starting Over. They're the best-selling authors of Sexual Enlightenment, endorsed by a world-renowned spiritual pioneer, Dr. Michael Beckwith. They're two co-founders of Tantra Nova Institute in Chicago and the originators of June 1st National Intimacy Day. They've coached billionaires, innovators, and power couples all over the world share their intimacy secrets at Global Young Presidents Organization Conference in the City of Love, Paris, and got nominated as Changemaker at the White House sponsored 2016 United States Women's Summit in Washington, D.C. Elsbeth and Freddie are beloveds, husband and wife, as well as business partners residing in Chicago. So, welcome back, you guys. We're super excited to have you on the podcast with us again.
You bet.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim, and for just looking forward to this conversation. And, really, both together we have evolved, I think, over the last 2 years, and it is just a pleasure to see what reach you have now. And I mean, the richness of your podcast. And it's so wonderful to share our love with you and, what we teach about creating intimacy and love. So thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, really great to be here. All the podcasts you mentioned we were on, we're ready to move in. We're coming over for dinner tonight.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we're excited because this is going to air on Valentine's Day. So this is perfect intimacy, love, all these great things that you guys speak about. So we're
Hmm.
super excited to share that with our followers. And we're looking forward to all the information you're going to bring to us. So can you tell everybody how you came to share Tantra and the cultivation of the life force energy? We'll start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yes, I just want to build a little bit on what you just said before we delve into how we came to all of this in our own lives. Is that today we want to really go deeper into that spark of love, of intimacy, of joy, of pleasure, and really take that a little further apart. So, whoever is listening, that you get a further appreciation of how you may be able to tap into your beautiful life giving energy that is the fuel of love, the fuel of passion. So,
Mm. Wow, I like all of that.
That's
Yeah, so yeah,
wonderful.
good to be back and happy holidays to everybody. And so yes, so we've had our institute for 25 years here in Chicago. A big part of the curriculum that we teach, a lot of it we learned in our certification programs that we went through. And initially for myself, I was introduced to a lot of what we teach when I was 13 years old. My father was a psychiatrist, and I was going through my puberty and curious about sex. And anyway, he gave me a book to read on how to integrate sex and meditation. And I thought, wow, this is great fun, sexy fun. You had a lot of this sexual energy, young guy. My girlfriend loved it. But more than that, what I really realized is that the practices assisted me as a meditation to shift my belief. At the time, I wanted to go on to college on athletic scholarship, but didn't believe I could do it. Living in Hawaii at the time. And so, but the practices shifted, allowed me, assisted me in shifting that belief. I did all the things that you would do to go on to college on athletic scholarship in terms of practice and clinics and win games and blah, blah, blah. But it was without the disbelief, without the resignation. And it all just unfolded. Well, I kept doing these practices and going to workshops and reading books. In my professional career, I was in software for a long time. After 15 years, it was just a job, and knowing what I knew about my own engagement in life and really enthusiasm. Something was missing, so I took a job in Chicago. I had been in San Francisco. And I really came to meet Elsbeth because we met. I was single online looking for Shakti, and she showed up. And 6 months to the day we met, I call it, we transcended the romantic drama, pooled our resources, and created this work, which is really, people hear about Tantra, they think about sex, and they think, oh, wow, it's a sexy yoga, it's going to be fun in bed. And then they get into it. And before people come to do our workshops, they write down, it's like an intake. And one of the things is, what would they like to get out of it? A better relationship, or a relationship, or work that's fulfilling, or a place that's inspiring, whatever it might be. And, coming from that, there's nobody out there but ourselves. What the practices really assist us in doing is really getting that we are living our lives from unconscious belief oftentimes, but we have a dream about what we want. So the practices of working with the altered state of the sexual and the energetic self, and we'll get more into that as we go, really assist us in seeing what we don't see about what we're doing to create what we're getting, to then move with grace, ease, and flow, with a plan, without resignation, towards what we most deeply desire. I know it's a lot said, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, so you can tell by Freddy's story that he early on learned to interact with his sexual life force energy in a further way. It's particularly as he describes it, for young adolescent guys, it's such a vital, for men in
Yeah.
general, it's a vital energy. And that just shows up as soon as they look at a pretty picture.
Mm.
Oops, here he goes. Leave alone looking at breasts. So whatever, so very visual, that really stimulates that sexual impulse. And how he learned to use that energy, to channel it in his love practices, in his sexual connection with himself, into his dreams, like, getting the college scholarship in basketball. So for me, the engagement with my sexual energy when I started practicing Tantra, which was when I hit 50, when I was quite despaired about relationship because I had this pattern of attracting unavailable men. And I didn't know how to step out of it so that I could create a lasting, intimate, and love relationship. So it was like a block that I encountered. That was the time when I decided to go deeper into the tantric practice. And for me, connecting my heart with my sexual self really opened up healing. So initially, for me, it was a great healing process, as it is for many women who come here, because we women, we are so integrated between our heart center and our sexual center. And sometimes we force something like having sex, perhaps not being in love, or we are so in love, but something is disconnected from our sexual self. Or like for me, creating relationships that didn't really support me in my own wish and evolution, but not knowing what to do about it. So either way, using that energy to manifest that what we want to have in our life, be it of physical nature, of feeling nature, and for me and for many, tantric practice to heal ourselves, like from old wounds, perhaps from abuse by another, or sometimes we abuse ourselves, not even knowing that we are doing it. And all in service of coming into wholeness, back into wholeness within. And from that wholeness, we can create relationship in a holistic, in a whole way, where we can feel fulfilled, where we feel seen, where we feel connected. And so that is how we came to it.
That's amazing. I think that's great. And I love how it interweaves that it's not just about sex, and it's not just about intimacy, and it can go into, more of your life, like where Freddie was saying with his scholarship and things like that. Like, it's interesting to see how when you start with this, how it can just spread out all over your life.
Yeah, the thing of it is that this energy, when we're in our sexual energy with ourselves or with another, we're in an altered state of awareness. There's an intelligence there as well. It's creative, it's pleasurable. And so in that altered state, more chemicals, endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin, the feel-good hormones, more loving, open, vulnerable, receptive, emotionally shifted. So we teach specific distinctions so that in that altered state, we can get more connected to our dreams, to shift the belief, the old stuck things that we have believed, to get that, oh wow, I can actually see and believe something else. But that's not just a thought, because it's somatic, it's in our bodies, it's in our nervous system. So it's really learning to be a curious witness, sitting in the awareness of breath, with all of that goes on in our bodies and our somatic selves, in the old belief, in the old story, because it's really requires some vigilance. We can do it. It's just so unconscious and automatic that we keep doing the old thing, which we've appropriated from something that in the past, But the good news is, again, we have this possibility of creating something totally new. And it's available to anybody in a body. That's the thing of it.
Hmm.
So, what about if we just introduce some distinctions for
Yes, please.
everyone? Because the question is then how, like Freddie learned to channel his life force energy into, that dream of getting this college scholarship, athletic scholarship. For me, what was like, how do I access my sexual center for healing purposes?
Hmm.
And of course, to come back to that, yeah, it is about pleasure, like pleasure in life, joy in life, living my life in a state of bliss instead of suffering. How would that be? And if you are listening today, just, and it's Valentine's, and you think, oh, how could I bring this into my life? Both to yourself, and if you're in a relationship, to your relationship. Allow us just to give you some idea of what the steps are here. So, to access our life force energy, we want to become aware of what we call the channel. So, in the tantric tradition, and that doesn't show up just in tantra. This shows up in many ancient wisdom traditions. These energy centers, in Sanskrit, they are called chakra. In our language, they are just energy centers. They are vortices, and each center, as you can see, is related to a certain location in the body, certain glands, certain hormones. Like here, the red one is connected to our sex organs and sex hormones. The sense of being grounded or lack of grounding can bring about fear of survival. So it goes through all of these energy centers. The green one is the heart center, love, compassion, connection, oxytocin, that hormone that has us feel connected.
I'll say something. Also, if we think of these energy centers as just areas in the body familiar to anybody in a body, where our internal self is really reading and experiencing and interpreting the external self. So, mommy, I love you so much, a child might say, and touch their heart. It's a feeling. I couldn't speak at the wake, a place in the throat. I feel it in my throat. It's sexual energy. We feel it in the second chakra. So we are areas in the body familiar to anybody in a body that are interpreting the external world internally.
So what we want is to become aware further of each of these centers. You can think of these centers as being vortices that spin in a certain frequency. And given that frequency energy, we cannot see or touch. But that doesn't mean that these frequencies are not there. And I know you, Barb and Kim, you're not only so familiar, but you actually tap into those frequencies in your readings,
Yep.
in your work with clients.
Mhm.
And so when you look at these energy centers, there may be places where we have constricted energy, like a knot in my stomach, like the yellow one, which is the power center. So if there is a knot, if there's a constriction, I'm not fully in my power. I'm
Mhm.
off killed. Or if, I feel I'm so in my head, disconnected from my body, from my emotions. If this is my primary point of leading in my life, then I miss a lot of what else is going on. So we want to become aware of each of the energy centers, and then we discover if there are constrictions, there are tantric practices that assist us in clearing that, all in service of opening up that channel. Because life force energy moves up on the inhale and moves down on the exhale, all on its own, all the time, with our knowing or without our knowing. And given that life force energy can show up in subtle states, so it moves up with each inhalation and exhalation, we can also bring awareness it and turbocharge life force energy in subtle state or aroused state throughout the channel. So I can bring up my sexual aroused energy into my heart center, or I can bring it up into my third eye center. And we use that life-giving energy as a fuel to enliven the heart, both the physical heart, that beats, and the emotional heart, to turbocharge my consciousness, my awareness, my intuitive self, and so forth. You can do this with each of the chakras to be fueled by that life force energy. And with that, we actually bring more aliveness to each center. We bring pleasure, we bring joy to these centers.
And I want to say also, as we're looking at these chakras and how we're interpreting the external world, when we start listening internally, we can start to get a sense of where we might be going in the direction we don't want to keep going, just by bringing awareness to it, because we often external reference. So I feel this way because of the weather, or because of what she said, or because of this. When we get that, oh, I'm feeling this thing and I'm witnessing this thing, and I can start to, with our breath, which we'll get into, and with our witness of that energetic self, we can start to what I call flatten. We call flatten that experience to then move with grace, ease, and flow towards what I want to create. Okay.
So you are saying that I can shift my emotions?
I can shift my emotions by being present to my emotions and sitting with them and breathing through them. And it's a practice.
Yeah, actually, that's great. So then we can start watching, witnessing what emotional state we are in. Like if I'm in a prolonged sadness. So I'm not talking about sadness. I feel sad, perhaps my dog died, or someone's little girl injured herself on her finger, and then, feeling compassion for her and feeling her sadness. Sadness becomes a constriction once it stays around for a longer time. Just like anger, when anger stays around for a longer time, it becomes resentment. And it establishes itself in the body, and that's a constriction. We can use our life force to clear it. And we then work with our life force and our conscious mind. And just how Freddy said, oh, I could witness it and be with it. And that is the place where choice arises. So I can choose, do I want to continue staying angry? Do I want to continue staying in this deep sadness that has slowly turned perhaps into a depression? Oh, I could lift my emotions. We call them elevated emotions like love, joy, peace, bliss, So all of that is possible. And back to the life force, we can learn to use that energy to support us in shifting our emotions.
What's interesting is that, this is an acquired practice to be able to witness this somatic, experience when mom says this or when she says that, and I just react. People say, I can't control myself. I just feel that anger. Okay, not to make that wrong. It's like, so if people at home do 10 belly breaths, and we'll talk about this later, in the morning, just 10 conscious belly breaths, that develops the capacity to be a witness to our somatic physical self when we feel that anger, rage about the traffic or about the whatever it might be, to then be able to sit with it, breathe through it, and then move in another direction that we choose. And that's where the practice becomes an acquired, ongoing practice.
What about if you could just guide us in 10 belly breaths?
Okay, so here, this is a parasympathetic breathing. So this is for your listeners. So this is how you get started with creating your life exactly the way you want it. So put a hand on your belly. Your eyes can be open, closed, or soft focused where they're just slightly open and just not paying much attention to what is in front of you. And then bring your awareness to your breathing. So breathing into your nose, down your trachea, your throat, all the way down into your diaphragm sitting behind the belly. And as you inhale, the diaphragm extends and the belly extends. Really extend the belly way out, feel it extending into your hand. And then as you exhale, feel the belly consciously flatten towards the spine, following with your awareness, your breath back up and out through your nose in your own pace, depth, and rhythm. Continue to breathe that way. Stay with it. So when the mind starts to wander or drift, just let it acknowledge it and come back to following the breath consciously into the nose, down your trachea, lungs, extending into your diaphragm and belly like a big balloon on your inhalation into your hand. Following your breath back up and out through your nose in your own pace, depth, and rhythm. And we're just going to do a few more breaths like that. I'm going to continue to talk. Stay focused on your breathing. Letting thoughts, distractions, interpretations, or meaning go. When you become aware, bring your awareness back to your breath. The rise of your belly on your inhalation. Flattening of your belly on your exhalation through your nose in your own pace, depth, and rhythm. Now you are your own witness to any thoughts, conversations, interpretations, or meaning. For now, just breathing and being.
And enjoy the rhythm of your breath like music rocking you. Breathing in, rising of the belly, breathing out, flattening of the belly, coming and going. And stay with this breath just for a little longer. And become aware that with each breath, with each inhalation, filling the belly up and flattening the belly on the exhalation, your life force energy moves up on the inhalation along the spine, up to the top of the head, and moves down on the exhalation and out into the earth. Feel the rhythm and notice how you are feeling right now. Your body. How do you feel emotionally right now? Anything that you may be experiencing at this very moment. And then you can remove your hand, bring it back into your lap and come back. Open your eyes, and if any of you two want to share how you feel.
Mom?
Oh, I felt really relaxed. Um, um, letting everything move away that was on my mind, because I'm an A-type person where everything's on my mind all the time. So it helped me to push all that away and just go with the flow with it and really feel at peace with myself and relaxed. I love doing that. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
And
one of my favorite breaths as well. And I'm so grateful that you guys have led us in this in a few episodes now. But I just, yeah, just definitely at peace. And then I could feel some agitation in my body. So that was very interesting because it was like, okay, obviously I've got some stuck energy that needs to be worked out, but I could just witness it and not get stuck in my mind thinking about it. So I was very relaxed and I love that breath.
Yeah, the witnessing of it is the thing because it's like you don't have to do anything about it. And by just acknowledging it, lessens it. But the particular kind of breathing where, because you've heard many times, just take 10 breaths. But the parasympathetic breathing is different from the somatic breathing where we just breathe into the lungs because in the parasympathetic breathing, we're bringing the breath down behind the diaphragm and extending the diaphragm in the belly, right? And to do that, we have to think to do that physiologically. And that thinking to do that physiologically gives us a little bit of a pause, a break from the story making in the mind that we all live in. So it's not like we have to wish that we stop thinking. We just don't attach to the thinking. We let it just float down the river as we breathe without being the total felt sense, we call it, of the thinking, of the story. And that's where it really becomes the practice of what we do when we want to shift something that is somatically an automaticity. I always get angry when she does that, or when this doesn't happen, or that happened, or when I want to create this thing and it doesn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And I know for myself, like I use this breath, like half after talking to you guys, and it's like I use this breath. So if I'm at work and there's something very frustrating happen, I will go to the bathroom or sit at my desk and just do some breaths to just, yeah, take that away and it just eases it down. So, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing to be able to just disconnect from that frustration or anger.
yeah,
Thank you
I do
so.
it.
Yeah, please.
I just did it the other day. I do it with my mom. My mom's 93, and when she phones me, she's anxious. And so when she gets anxious, I try to get her to do the deep breathing with me to help her calm down, right? And also while I'm doing it to her and getting her because she has to think, she goes, "I can't do that." Yeah, yeah, you can. Just think about it, mom. But I find when I'm telling it to her, I'm also calming down because
Mm.
I get anxious just talking to her because of her level of where she's
Yeah.
at. So yeah, so you guys doing this and showing people how to do it is amazing because it really works.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving these examples where you have applied it in your
Very
everyday
practical.
life, because that is really where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
It's not just going into stillness practice, yes, where we familiarize our nervous system with that belly breath, because it does, we don't do it automatically. It's not, we breathe up in the chest, which is so that we don't suffocate, which is built into us, which is great. However, it can also have us more anxious, more being outside of ourselves instead of inside of ourselves.
Right.
Then I want to add that the breath is the carrier of energy. Without the breath, there is no life. And life means life force. As soon as we stop breathing, we die, you know. And
Yeah. And
most likely perhaps you have witnessed someone dying. You see that's the breath is the last thing that goes. After that, the person is declared dead. So if breath and energy go hand in hand when we die, they must go hand in hand when we are alive. And this practice is such a great, sweet, little, simple example of how they go together. When we breathe into the belly and the breath comes in and the breath goes out, it's like a seesaw. We come into a rhythm. There is more oxygen coming to the brain. That what I described earlier, that the life force energy moves up along the spine on the inhale and moves down on the exhale, that is all activated further. So we can bring through the conscious breath more aliveness just with a simple practice into our body, into the way we feel. And then it has this added benefit of slowing down and feeling more peaceful. Or, Kim, as you described, becoming more aware of the possibility of witnessing.
Yeah, the universal harmony that the breath brings us all into when we do it consciously is the very harmony that happens when we bring consciousness to the sexual. And, I want to bring that up because that's the big piece that makes our work a little different from the typical approaches to transformation in terms of seeing something in our lives that we want that we haven't been able to create yet, transforming into something new. Is that connection that happens, again, as I mentioned earlier, the altered state emotionally and chemically, aligned with breath awareness and intention, we start to get in touch with what we don't see about what we're doing to create what we're getting. And therein lies the intelligence of what sexual energy is in terms of it was creating life before we had language. And when we bring consciousness to it, the kernel, the essence of that energy, creativity and pleasure, starts showing up as a affect, a defect, automaticity, just from in the simple process of living. Creativity and pleasure start showing up as a deeper listening frequency, a belief.
And imagine bringing the breath we just practiced to an aroused state where I can use the breath to really redraw on that wonderful feeling in my sexual center. We brought her here. So you may be familiar with her already. That is our yoni. Yoni is the sacred space of a woman, the sexual center. And so I can breathe up that pleasure, that enlivening feeling that may arise in my yoni. I can breathe it up into my heart. I can breathe it up into my third eye center. I can breathe it up beyond myself into my cosmic self. And we have a little graph here for you just to give you an idea of how we can move this energy through our body, through our being. So we call it the dimensions of 4 dimensions of intimacy. So the first one is on the physical, what does it say? Sexual intimacy, the sex, the lower center. It would be the orange center here. Actually, both center are involved here. Then the next one is the emotional intimacy, which is the heart center. It's the green one. And then we go to mental intimacy, which is the third eye one, the thoughts, where thoughts reside, which is the purple one. Oh, I'm doing a lot of juggling here. And then the fourth one is the spiritual intimacy, that is consciousness, both consciousness within and consciousness in the never-ending multiverse or galaxies of endlessness, ever-presence, that we can connect to. And in our practice, we also learn to use this life force, sexual aroused energy, to move up these different stages where I then can connect to my cosmic self and the cosmos itself, and so I can make love to the cosmos and back down again. And so do you want to say a little bit?
Yeah.
Our lingam. You know him already, don't you?
Yeah. So this is the lingam, or the Sanskrit term for penis, lingam, which means wand of light, much more endearing than dighead, And there's a lot of unconsciousness for the man in this. And one of the primary edicts in all the variations of Tantra that there are for the man is to learn to separate ejaculation from orgasm. And that's often where it gets a little confusing for men who hear about this for the first time. Oh, I can last longer, or I'll have better orgasms and so on. And that will be affected. And yet, on the way to being able to do that, we start to let go of the unconsciousness around this energy, the automaticity of wanting to ejaculate, which is limbically wired to procreate the species. So we're talking about using our consciousness to use this altered state to shift something in our lives, right? So in starting to learn to separate ejaculation from orgasm, which is a very mechanical thing to learn, yet again, in the process of doing that, one lets go and gets in touch with fear, anger, guilt, jealousy, possession, all of it's loaded. I mean, the sexual piece is just loaded with all kinds of energetic experiences, thoughts, and feelings. So once we start to develop the capacities through the practice of the mechanical piece of separating ejaculation from orgasm, we start to get some distance from all that emotional, energetic, and somatic stuff that's there, to then move with just what happens in the energetic experience of that sexual energy. That 3 seconds of orgasm that is so blissful for us, for men, for women, that we strive for, But in those 3 seconds, we are open, we're free, we're vulnerable, anything's possible. So what we learn to do is extend those 3 seconds to 2 minutes, to 5 minutes, to 30 minutes, and we can play in that ether, in that altered state for a long time, in that space of creativity, and that becomes familiar and accessible just in breathing. We start tuning into the subtleties of pleasure that are everywhere.
I want to say something too here. So when Freddy speaks about this ejaculation and an orgasm, typically in the West, we consider this to be the same. However, in the tantric practice, they are distinctly different. So we consider ejaculation that actually not only we consider it, ejaculation is brought forth through a quivering of a muscular ring that goes around the base of the magic wand. It's right here. And at the height, right before of the ejaculate, like at 9.5, 9.75, 10 being the ejaculatory moment, in preparation, the scrotum pulls up, that muscular ring around the base of the penis starts quivering, just like you can see it here, all in service to eject the ejaculate. Once the ejaculate is gone,
refractory,
the energy is gone. So for the men, if he wants to really extend the orgasmic experience and like bathe in it, extend it not just from a 3-second orgasm into a 30-minute orgasm. He wants to learn how to master that muscular ring so that it doesn't go off. When that doesn't go off, there is no ejaculate, there is no energy loss. Now, he doesn't want to keep holding this energy down in his sexual center. He doesn't want to get blue balls or...
Yeah, the medical term priapism, where the penis doesn't relax. It's the breathing that's important, and that oxygenates the spongy tissues of the penis or the lingam, so that when you're complete, you just complete, and the blood just flows naturally out.
So he wants to learn how to master that muscle, that it doesn't go off, while he also has learned to master his breath so that he can breathe up into his heart, into his heart center. So his sex and his heart become connected. And that allows him to become more connected within himself. That allows him to feel his orgasm from his beautiful magic wand up into his heart, coming up, and then he can, of course, channel it further into his third eye. So men wants to practice this in solo practice, and we also teach a ritual to couples or partnered people how the woman can support him in channeling his energy. So there's another dimension. In solo practice, we are just focused on ourselves. When we are with our partner, it's a different story because it's can be quite vulnerable for a man to be so exposed when it's not all just about coming, about releasing, which is wonderful. It's not that we are not for that. However, in the tantric practice, the man learns to have choice if he wants to release his energy or if he wants to sustain, cultivate, and channel his energy, where at some point he doesn't need to ejaculate. But you may want to say more about that.
Well, what's interesting is that for the man, because we are modeled, there's two emotions that are okay to show, and that's, excuse my French, fucking or fighting. But emotional intimacy, nurturing, that's like not okay for guys, even though we have all those feelings. So when we're in our sexual self, and particularly the orgasmic moment, we cry, we emote, we are connected, anything's possible, right? We're just totally open vessels. So we start with the feeling of that. So we want to connect there, but it appears often as lust, selfish love to the woman. All you want to do is, screw me. And he's really looking to connect. But she starts at the heart because women start with the emotion, women are wired different, like they're wired to listen for the baby internally, left brain, right brain, emotional cognition to, analytical cognition. It's quick. Guys are a little duller instruments. We can learn, and the practice of separating ejaculation from orgasm starts to develop that capacity. The way that we are now with our feminine partners is much more connected because we're connected with our own androgynous selves through separating the automaticity of driving to ejaculate. So men start to shift their listening through this process of learning to separate ejaculation from orgasm. And that's where Tantra becomes a lot bigger than a bedroom, a boudoir trick.
Although it's a great trick too.
It's a trick back to what we've forgotten, I call it.
Yeah, because the man becomes more present to himself, and out of that, more present to his partner. It takes something to forego that impulse, because that just kicks in. It's a biological thing, but to forego that requires willingness, focus, and then the channeling. So often what men report is, for one thing, that they come back the next day, both in Freddy's men's workshop where they learn this practice, or in our couples workshop where, one ritual evening where the man is the receiver, the woman is the giver, and he comes back, and either way, they say, after having practiced this with a partner or a solo, I didn't even know I can do that, And there is usually a sense of pride, and more importantly, a sense of empowerment, where the man has agency or learns or returns to having agency over this powerful testosterone energy, so he can guide it, he can feel it, he can move with it, he can use it to listen more to his beloved, instead of just being on his own trip. Again, not that this is wrong, but it's just the first level of, interconnecting with that energy. And so it's really a wonderful way for the men to come into greater integration, and out of that into relational integration. I want to add one more thing, which is these practices are not just like for men, as Freddy described it. It's for the one who is more in their masculine energy or yang energy. Because in a same-sex couple relationship, like two lesbians, one of them is more in their yang energy and the other one is more in their yin energy. If that wasn't so, there wouldn't be attraction, a magnetism. Same for same-sex relationship between two men. So the one who is more in their yang energy, that could be a woman or in a transgender relationship or bisexual relationship, that they often report the same, that they feel just like Freddy described it, like this being overtaken by that wonderful yang energy. And so also a woman who is more in her masculine can channel up that wonderful energy into her heart that allows her to connect more deeply with her partner who is more in her yin energy. I just wanted to say that because if you are listening and don't identify with male and female, that are familiar with yin and yang energies, that you can relate to these practices in that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you sharing that with our followers because, it's important to know that this is for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, so,
And that's not static, because it could be in a relationship. Sometimes one is more yang or male and one's more female, and that, reverses itself, whether it's a gender thing or just an energetic thing. And so to be aware of those polarities, because that polarity is important to be aware of, because then you can start bumping heads if you aren't aware of what, energy is happening in the space, or you are in the space for that moment.
yeah.
So that kind of an awareness starts to shift a lot of the conflicts and upsets and disconnects that we have in relationship as well.
Yeah, and then also let's bring it now to the woman or the one who is in her feminine, or the person who is in their feminine. The capacity for the yang person, for Freddy in this case, to be more connected between his sex and his heart allows him then to be there for me, to be present to me in a whole new way, because he's no longer driven by his magic wand. He is guided by his magic wand, which is different, And so in the ritual for the woman, we call it the yoni ritual, that is about the woman being in the receiver role, just like I described it earlier, the man being in the receiver role, the woman in the giving role, supporting him to channel, to touch his magic wand and to be attuned to him, so that I don't get just, I get to play with his lingam and I'm having fun. And then it just gets him over the hump, No, I want to be present. I listen to Freddy. And what level is he at? On a scale from 1 to 10, is he on a 2? Because sometimes the lingam is not necessarily indicating this. He may have a very hard lingam, a magic wand, but be at a lower level, at a 4. Or the lingam may be a little softer, but he may be already at an 8. So I want to be attuned so that my support, my touch, my presence is really attuned to where he's at, so he can breathe it up, and I always breathe up with him into his heart and then guide it down again. So I'm really in the dance with him, yet he's the guide. Now, a man can bring this to the woman, where the woman is the receiver and the man is the giver. And would you share a little bit about the man's role in the yoni ritual?
Well, as we were saying earlier, in terms of the man getting in touch with the feminine, the yin yang, that polarity, in the giver role for the man with the feminine energy, he is starting to have to look at his own propensity to feel engaged, his sexual energy. What does he do with his erection? He's working with her. It's about her. How does he transmute that energy? Now, and unless you practice this, the transmuting of, the permits the automaticity to want to ejaculate or want to thrust and that, then you can't do this. But this you can learn to do it. So for the man, in holding the space, he transmutes that energy to his heart, and then he just uses that energy to just hold space for her. And it's a pleasurable energy. It's not a shaming, oh God, this is now about me. No, it's like taking the energy that automatically shows up and then breathing it up with attention on it and intention with the breath to move it up to the heart. And you can learn to start to tap in to those subtle listenings and energetic awarenesses that can really move energy. People think, oh, when you feel an orgasm, it just shows up everywhere. You can actually channel and what I call sip on that energy energetically and move it to the heart and have heartgasms. But so that's where you hold space for the other, is where you can learn to get out of your own way and use your own energy to hold that space.
So we never talk about suppressing the energy. We talk about channeling the energy. We welcome the arousal and at the same time learn not to be driven by the arousal. We use the arousal. And I remember when I received this ritual for the very first time, it was during the phase when I was looking for healing, because me having this pattern of attracting unavailable men, there was some pattern within me that kept me from creating lasting intimacy and love, which, was related to not fully trusting men. But that is what I discovered in my tantric healing. So when I entered the tantric practice at that level, Freddy was not in my life yet. I mean, I wanted to prepare myself, to clear myself so that I could attract the men who I want to be with and create a lasting, intimate love relationship with. But I was the barrier, so I needed to do some clearing. And I remember I worked with a practice partner in this first workshop, I think it was, yeah. And it was amazing because that practice partner brought that presence that Freddy just described of being grounded in his manhood, yet he was open in his heart and he was fully there for me. It was not about him. That didn't mean that he may not have felt an arousal, but he channeled it. And I remember that when we started the practice, I noticed how unfamiliar it was for me to have a man be there for me, just for me. Because what I was used to was like, when a man was so close to my yoni, and in the ritual, the man has his magic wand covered because it is not about him, so we don't bring focus on that. The focus is brought to the yoni, to the woman, to how she feels, what she may want. If there are emotions that come up, the man holds space for that. And she can cry, she can laugh, she can scream, she can be silent, whatever is there for her. And that creates that healing space. So I remember when he was so close to my yoni, like really sitting across from me, and I was lying there, that it was like, wow, I felt this safe space. And it was a healing in itself, just having a man there, being there fully for me. So that in itself was a healing.
That's that's a healing right away. Boom.
And many women report that after having done that practice for the first time, that this was just a beautiful opening.
But it's the space that one is required to be in to really tap into that intimate vulnerability of what happens in the sexual energetic. Because, in a give and take, it feels great and it's good, and we do get to those wonderful moments. But to be in it as a meditation and working with the altered state as a meditation with a giver requires the giver to be out of their own way of anything that they might want, desire, or wish, but to be without expectation.
And the other thing I noticed, and I have noticed with many women who have come through our work, is that having his focus, his presence, allows me to be focused on myself, to be with myself. On the other hand, that can also be confronting, that because it's very vulnerable. Because often, and I remember I used to do this quite a bit, when I didn't feel turned on, or when something didn't work, or it just like something came up for me, it was easy for me to turn to the man in lovemaking and take care of him, instead of inviting him and feeling perhaps the discomfort or the shame or the, asking for what I want. that may be difficult at times. So that also allows me then to open up and allow the men to be there for me. That can be a big, at least for me, that has been a learning path. And then that in turn, of course, when I allow that, opens up deeper trust, opens up letting go, opens up being supported, being seen in my vulnerability. And that allows my energy to flow because I'm no longer constricted by shame or by self-judgment or making him wrong, or something. It's like, oh, yeah. And then it's all about, for the woman, that the Shakti can flow. Shakti is the feminine energy in Sanskrit. And once the woman opens up, the energy just moves through us. It happens by itself, both in subtle ways and then also in the aroused state. Remember when we talked about opening the channel, the chakra channel? The energy just flows through us. And there's a difference initially in what we teach men and women. We teach men to tap into their sexual lingam energy, magic wand energy, and channel it up. For the woman, we start out with tapping into the energy so that we can open up and the energy can flow through us. So we don't start out with channeling. We start with opening up for the woman. And then at some point when the channel is opened up, I often now do channeling practices, just as Freddy describes it for himself. Do you want to say something?
No, I just thought they might want
You
to say
described it
something.
in such a beautiful way that it's too bad that people in high school don't listen to you guys so they have a better understanding of how to be themselves as they're maturing with their sexual energy. It would make such a change for them and how they would grow in such a nice way to understand they're both the same. They're both on the same grounds. They're looking for the same end result, right? But with a lot more involved with it. And it would be really nice if it was, maybe you should write a book.
Well, we have written a book, but there's many books that are out there, and there can't be enough written and said and learned about this because if we were to approach this energy that has been around, as I said earlier, before we had language, and if we were in the beingness of what that energy allows us to experience when we're in it, and we encapsulated that as a way of listening, it would be a different world. I would be seeing myself in you, and there would be peace on earth. There would be so much possible. So as we continue to unlearn what we have appropriated about something that's been around forever that has an intelligence, then we're remembering what we've forgotten, and we can come back to just the magnificence of the creation of being, which is, we're a spark of that divine, and I think we're part of our maturing, part of our evolutionary consciousness expansion is where we're at. And, so we're still on the way to remembering what we've forgotten.
That's true.
I love how it talks about like just how vulnerable you are in that space and how you are individually vulnerable and then together and then you're just supporting each other in that. And so I think that's amazing. And I think it's amazing that you start with yourself because I think all healing, we start with ourselves and then share it outwards. So in this practice, it sounds like, right, you're learning your own vulnerability to heal from your own trauma and then being able to just come at a different space and being when you're with somebody that you're intimate with.
Yeah, and the way you're being in your life, because that's really deep when you have your first sexual experience with yourself, which many have had, the orgasm or masturbation, and we feel shamed by it. We feel like we have to hide from it, or we hear our parents making love and they lie to us, or they slap us for eavesdropping, or so we learn in this around this intimate vulnerability, shaming and beating and guilt making. as opposed to, yeah, it's great, it's wonderful. And how can you start to turbocharge that experience as a way of listening, as a foundation of listening from that beingness, that intimacy in our conversations with people, in our dreams, in how we see other people's lives, how we relate to. It's totally, total encompassing, when you really get into it. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
And I loved how Elsbeth talked about when you are discomfort, look, when you feel like you're not comfortable. And so then you just pay all the attention and you're just like, I'm going to shift it out from myself to be able to receive and to be able to be in this vulnerable state. And
Mm,
so I thought that was very interesting that you shared that, because I think there's a lot of people that are out there that are feeling that. And, now they know that there's a practice that they can start doing that will shift them out of that uncomfortableness. So thank you for
yeah,
sharing that.
Oh, you're so
yeah.
welcome. And what I find is really important that there is a willingness from oneself to whatever is up for me, and that our partner is willing to do their own work, because I cannot heal Freddy. I cannot change Freddy.
No.
However, Freddy can change himself. And he needs to be willing. I cannot force it. Sometimes a person may come to us who is married, they are in a partnership, and they even ask, can I come by myself? And yes, they can come by themselves and do their own work. And then bring back what they learn, what they open up. And of course, if both are there, imagine how the whole thing gets turbocharged
Right.
and embellished. And
Yeah, and the first step to that is first for all of us owning our own upsets. And when I say that, it's not like there's not a request to be made or something that you'd like to negotiate differently. It's the anger. That anger part of it comes from a deep place for us. And until we stop externally referencing that someone else is making me feel this way and we take responsibility for the feeling, we're stuck. We've given up all of our power. So in that process, we start to become more masterful of ourselves and our destinies and how we're creating our life. So it's starting with that. Not that you don't have a request, it's owning the charge, the anger part of it. And
yeah,
really take a moment to breathe and be with, well, what is it that I'm really angry about? And you may get back to where it has nothing to do with them. It was something that was said to you when you were a kid, or that was done to you in the configuration of the family that you felt and remember at, 30, 40, 50 years old.
and that is so great that you brought this up, because when I'm a giver, I want to have familiarity with that, because when I give to Freddie, and we demonstrate this ritual even in front of our students.
Live.
We wear a sarong, but
Well, yeah, there's different levels.
yeah, but the point is that what can show up, be it in our intimate embrace in our own private space, or as teachers in front of students, there may be at some moment Freddie may do something or say something and I get triggered as his giver. And my job as a giver is to be there and hold space. A great practice to really forego my impulse to reprimand him or to make him wrong, or to,
Correct him or ask why or what is that,
yeah,
or
because that is, and so that my own work on managing my emotions, on witnessing, on shifting in the moment. Of course, I need to practice this, because otherwise it's not going to be available in the moment. Is also further developed in these healing rituals, the partner rituals, or in the solo ritual. Because I can remember there are women who come to my women's workshop, and on Saturday night, on that 3-day weekend, they get to do as homework a self-love practice, which is different from masturbation. Masturbation is about the destination, getting to the destination. Self-love is about the journey. It's not about the goal. And some women get really confronted with themselves to be asked to be with themselves for an hour. Some women come back and say, I couldn't do it. After 15 minutes, I got bored. You know, what indicator is that I cannot be with myself for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes? And how can I be with another if I cannot be with myself? In that intimate connection, of course, other women come back and say, wow, I never felt so much pleasure with myself, and extending pleasure and being there. And so it depends on where the woman is. Right? We want to cultivate that being present to whatever shows up, be it an irritation in self-love, like boredom, or it doesn't make any sense, or whatever may come up, staying with it, being as a giver to another, foregoing the impulse of the trigger so that I can truly be there for the other. And these are just great trainings, not only for rituals with self or with another. No, they are training for life. So I can be with a coworker when he or she goes off and just be present, witnessing what goes on over there, breathe, and in some sense hold space, which is also then holding space for myself.
That's amazing. I love that. Can you tell everybody where you can find you guys so that they can follow along with you or join some of your courses to get more understanding of this and to have these beautiful practices?
Yeah. So, in a couple of ways, you can reach us. One is to go to our program page on our website, and the link for that is in the show notes. Kim, thanks so much for dropping that in there. And on that program page, there are various programs, both group workshops for men, for women, co-ed workshops where you can come with your partner as a couple, or if you're single, you can come by yourself and you pair up with a practice partner that we provide. Also private programs, if you feel like, no, I don't want to do this work in a group, I want to have either one-on-one with Elsbeth or Freddy, or as a couple, one-on-one with both of us. That's all on the program page at tantranova.com, TANTRANOVA, tantranova.com. And then we have a Valentine's gift for you, which is called The Introduction to Sexual Meditation. It's a video class, and in the class we build further on our conversation today and teach you practices, how to open your channel, how to move your subtle energy through that channel up from the base to the top of the head and back down again, so that you can, out of this conversation, this Valentine's conversation today, actually bring practices into your everyday life. And you can practice this kind of breathing also together in the embrace with your beloved. And the link also for that video class, Sexual Meditation, is in the show notes. And then thirdly, you are invited to get our book called Sexual Enlightenment, How to Create Lasting Fulfillment in Life, Love, and Intimacy. You can get this on our website at tantranova.com, or there is a link in the show notes that gets you right to Amazon, where you can get it in hard copy or in audio format.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. That's very gracious of you. Thank you for offering that for our followers for Valentine's. So
Yeah,
whether you're with a beloved or you're by yourself, it's a beautiful gift for Valentine. So thank
very
you
much.
guys for sharing that. And thank you for sharing your time with us. If you had a final thought to leave with our listeners, what would it be?
Happy Valentine's, and soak up these practices and bring it as a gift to your beloved or to a date that you may have this Valentine's Day, this Valentine's weekend.
Nice.
Keep dancing, be happy, stay curious.
Love
Good
it.
one.
Love
Curiosity
it.
is.
Well, thank you both so much for being with us. Happy Valentine's Day to both of you, to you, Mom, and to all of our followers. And thanks for joining us. And everybody else, we will see you on the next one.
You bet.